National's new drug reform spokeswoman says her party favours an evidence-based approach that's also firm and fair. But Chole Swarbrick, the Green Party's drug reform spokesperson, says Paula Bennett is peddling misinformation. They both join us now. Good morning.
Good morning.
So Paula, I'm going to come to you first. What do you think the evidence says and how it informs how drug reform should be taken?
Yeah, well, I think that we are looking at a binding referendum at the next election. That's a big move for the country. And I suppose what I'm saying is let's make sure that we're putting all of the arguments out on the table, that we are looking at the evidence that we can from other jurisdictions. I don't have all the answers. I'd like them before I vote. And I suppose this role, I'm just sort of presenting the questions and saying we've got 18 months, so let's present them from all of the different arguments. Let's gather the evidence from overseas. Let's gather the evidence that we can from here and present that to the public so that they can make an informed decision.
Do you think the evidence says that the war on drugs has been working so far?
Oh goodness, it can't be. We see too many people addicted, too many ruined lives, too much of it in our streets, whether it's from meth to synthetics and others. So no, I don't, and I'm not opposed certainly to some of certainly the rehabilitation and the health base that they're talking about. I believe there's a complement of other ways as well, and that it can be combined. I'm relatively open-minded, but it scares me, and it should. I've got kids. I don't want dating people that are addicted. I want to do whatever I can to stop that at the beginning, and I'm just keen to see all of that out there so that we can have an informed debate.
Now, surely, if you don't want your kids dating people who are addicted, then a health-based approach would work. Chloe, this is what you are saying is going to work for us.
Morena, Hayley. I'm sorry I can't be in the studio this morning. I'd love to shake Paula's hand because I think there's a surprising number of things that we agree on. And this is something which I've been saying from the beginning when I was first positioned in the place of our Green Party drug law reform spokesperson. I think there is a huge amount of consensus, actually. All of New Zealand politicians, I hope, want the best outcome for New Zealanders and want to see sensible investment of public funds, but also want to decrease the harm that's currently being proliferated through our communities. So the best way to do this is through the harm-based harm reduction model, and it does look like taking that health approach. So I'm stoked to see that the National Party seems to be on board with that, and I would once again formally re-extend the invitation to Paula to join the cross-party group on drug harm reduction that's been running in Parliament for a number of months now.
Do you know how you're going to approach harm reduction? Do you have an addiction treatment in mind?
Yeah, so the government announced our response to the synthetics crisis a few months ago now, towards the end of last year, which looks like targeting those who are caught within the web of addiction and ensuring that they have access to the support when they need it and they won't be criminalised. But on the other hand, actually targeting those resources at the people who are importing these substances into the country. And funnily enough, speaking to the consensus between different political parties, this is actually mirroring a bit of the work that was done by the National Party in their pilot program Te Ara Oranga and Northland. So I'd hope that there's more work that we can do in building consensus, moving towards that harm reduction model.
Do you think that we can be building consensus here, Paula?
I'm sure that there's areas that we can work together, and as there should be on things, but we do have some fundamental differences. So I have real issues with the amount of drugs that are coming over our borders. I believe that we should be increasing the numbers that are drug detection dogs in our ports. I believe that we should be going through our containers more than what we currently do. I think we should be much tougher on gangs that do make a huge amount of money. It suits them to get younger people addicted earlier. There's a whole education component to this. I do believe in law and order, and I think that we need to be careful that we're not sending a message that this is all about unfortunate circumstances for those that get addicted. We have people that make money and profit from it, and they are, quite frankly, the scoundrels that we need to be coming down incredibly hard on. And so I just think that we've got to make sure that in the way that we talk about it being a health-based, it is law and order as well, and it needs a combined approach across a whole lot of multi-disciplines, which, as Chloe says, you can see from the work that's been done in Northland, and that I really do support.
And if I may just contribute to that point made by Paula there, I mean, if we're to talk about ensuring that law and order works effectively, and we're to take those lessons that have been learnt overseas and other jurisdictions where they have moved away from the war on drugs and simply ratcheting up penalties, is that we've seen something akin to what we actually saw under the end of alcohol prohibition. You know, when alcohol was prohibited, we had gangs involved, we had extreme amounts of criminal activity and violence associated, and we also had a huge amount of chemicals and an inconsistency in what people were actually being sold and what people were consuming. Now when people go to the shop to purchase alcohol, there are responsible bartenders who obviously aren't going to sell that to people under the age of 18. There are substantive penalties for those who don't, and we regulate it, and that is what we need to be doing here with cannabis. If we're talking in particular about getting this out of the hands of kids, the best way to do that is to provide a regulated legal model, because I'll tell you one thing, drug dealers are not checking ID.
That is true, but let's not beat around the bush. There are such things out there called alcopops, which some might say that kids are attracted to. Are you slightly worried that this may happen with some cannabis product?
I'm more than slightly worried, and I get Chloe's argument, but the counter to it is that in some of the jurisdictions that we've seen cannabis be legalised, actually the illicit market has increased. On the regulation, they've regulated the amount of THC that can be in marijuana. Well, actually the illicit, then it becomes stronger, it becomes more dangerous, and it is equally sought after, and gangs still profit from it. So there is a counter to this that we just want to make sure that the whole arguments are being put out there, and if there is evidence that a legal market around marijuana disappeared, well, we haven't seen it actually in those places. More young people, and where it's legalised, people under the age of 18, there's been a huge increase in the number that are taking marijuana, and there is evidence that that can fry little brain cells when you're younger, and that is of concern to me. So there are a whole lot of areas. It is not as simple as saying we'll legalise marijuana, those that want to have a joint can, she'll be right, we'll be able to tax it, you know, we'll make sure there's a legal age. There's a whole lot of unintended consequences that we've got 18 months to really get on the table so the public can make a decision.
If I may just ask there, Paula, what evidence is it that you're referring to there?
Certainly there's been a whole lot of, and that's part of the problem, is these things haven't been actually, you know, in the market for that long, that we haven't got everything absolutely lined up, but we have seen a 6% increase in car crashes that came both from insurance companies and from the local transport agencies. We've got the stuff that's happening in Canada, we've got the 8 different states that we've got in America, and they are saying there is still evidence of there being an illicit, more young people turning up to emergency departments that have got drug issues. So, you know, as I say, let's just make sure that we are putting the whole story out there. I understand that you're so pro, and you know, that's good on you, you're entitled to your opinion. I just want to make sure we're getting a balanced argument.
Look, Paula, I understand that you are attempting to position yourself as the middleman here, and that means not taking a stance either way, but if I may put it to you, that seems a lot like a little bit of a cynical political move, which I think kind of belittles and degrades the tone of the debate. I understand that you're obviously putting forward a level of scepticism, and I actually myself hold that level of scepticism as well. I personally do not like drugs and would like it if we could eradicate them from planet Earth, but we're not going to be able to do that. So what I'm saying is that we need to use the evidence. The evidence that it seems as though you're referring to is one report, which was an anomaly and an outlier in the form of the Rocky Mountain report, which has been debunked multiple times. I understand that you're putting forward arguments against, and I would love to entertain them, but I just think that instead of simply raising scepticism, I would love to see what the National Party is actually proposing here.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying let's have the questions out there. People are going to be making a really, really important decision at the next election, and what I suppose what we've learned from Brexit is let's have all of those questions out before people vote,
exactly, and
not try and sort of clean up a mess afterwards, which is sort of where we're at. And I take this sort of passive-aggressive and trying to put me down, but I've been in politics for far too long to jump at that one.
So we could do this. We could honestly do this for the whole show. Honestly, there's so much more to get into, but we'll let you get into that in the house. Thank you very much, Paula Bennett and Chole Swarbrick.